Good evening, councillors and officers and members of the public, either in attendance or watching at home. Welcome to this evening's planning committee. I will just run through some housekeeping rules. Should a fire alarm sound, if there is a need to evacuate, please follow the lead of our officers and exit the building on their instruction and congregate where indicated at the front of the building so we can make sure that everyone is accounted for. Do not use the lifts, thank you. Please ensure that mobile phones are either set to silent or switched off. The meeting is being recorded and you may be visible on camera. If this is an issue for you, please let one of the officers present know of your concern. Protocol for the meeting. I will now run through the protocol for the member and public participation and the rules of debate. Please note that the chair's ruling during the debate will be final. The planning officer will introduce the item relating to the planning application and summarise the main points. Members will have the opportunity to ask questions of the officer. I will then invite members of the public who have registered to speak on an item to address the meeting. If you have registered to speak, I will introduce you by name and invite you to step forward. Please use the microphone and you will have 3 minutes, and I will be asked to stop once your time has expired. Members of the committee will then be given the opportunity to ask questions or to clarify statements. The item will then be moved and seconded and debated before a vote is taken. Agenda item 1, apologies for absences, Carol.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got Councillor Hall and Councillor Kilgallen, and we have Councillor Carvetta with us as a substitute for Councillor Hall. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 2, election of Vice Chair. Following Councillor Brown leaving the committee, the first thing we need to do today is to elect a Vice Chair. Can I please have a nomination for the position of Vice Chair? David?
Nominate Councillor Jenny Bone.
Okay. And any other nominations? Okay. And councillors, are you happy to accept the nomination? Okay. Can I find a seconder, please? Thank you. Right, so we'll go to the vote then, please. I would say that was carried. And Jenny, welcome to Vice Chair. Would you like to move over here? Okay, thank you very much. Item 3. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 8th of October. You have the minutes in front of you from the 8th of October in your pack. Do I have a proposer, please, for the minutes? Thank you. And do I find a seconder? Okay. Can I have a show of hands that the minutes are correct? Okay, I think that's all carried and correct. I'll sign the minutes.
Okay.
Cheers, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, members' declarations. Members, can I ask you to confirm that you are coming to the meeting with an open mind and that you have not predetermined the application before you? Okay. Can I ask if anybody has visited any of the sites detailed on the agenda? Finally, does anyone have a declaration that you may wish to make, please? If you could, state the item nature of your interest, whether it's disclosable or pecuniary interest or non-statutory interest, that would be helpful. Okay, thank you, members. So we'll go on to item 5. First item on the agenda is application NW-24-00564-FUL, 5 to 9 Midland Road, Wellingborough. I will hand over to Nicola Thompson to present the report. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So this application, as mentioned, is 5 to 9 Midland Road in Wellingborough. The site comprises derelict buildings, which includes the old post office. It's located in Wellingborough town centre within the primary shopping area and along a secondary shopping frontage. It's allocated for mixed use, that's retail and residential, and sits within Wellingborough Conservation Area. To the south, on the opposite side of Midland Road, is the Swansgate Shopping Centre. To the east is Wellingborough Town Telephone Exchange Building, and to the north, the rear of the site, is the Matalan Store, and the west, Granville Chambers, which is a mix of retail units with various uses, including residential above ground floor. The existing access to the site lies to the east of the existing buildings off Midland Road. The application seeks full planning permission to demolish the former Wellingborough Post Office and to construct 2 new residential buildings consisting of 74 apartments, that's 45 one-bed and 29 two-beds, along with associated parking and cycle storage provisions. The development would be accessed off Midland Road using the existing crossover, which, if we're looking at the plans, this is Midland Road frontage and the access where my red dot is, down here. The main building fronting Midland Road would be 5 stories high with a 6th storey within the roof space, and the massing reduces to 4 stories with a 5th storey in the roof space as you move further into the site. The main building would comprise of 70 apartments and then 4 apartments in the masonette-style building to the rear of the site, which is just here. The buildings are proposed to be finished in red brick and incorporate slate roofs with architectural detailing to respect the heritage of the site and the conservation area. In terms of parking, 6 undercroft spaces are proposed within the northern building, where the red dot is up there, and then 2 smaller areas of surface level parking within the site. These provide a total of 8 spaces in those smaller areas, and it's intended that they serve the accessible units. Secure bike racks are proposed within the site on 2 locations, on the north side up here and the western side. It is important to note that planning permission for the redevelopment of the site was approved in November 2005. This proposal sought to redevelop the whole site for residential purposes with a small retail unit on ground floor fronting Midland Road, and the residential accommodation was similar. It comprised of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments with the building up to 5 stories. Parking for the vehicles was proposed at lower ground floor level, and again access was off Midland Road. This is a material consideration in the determination of the current application, as it establishes the principle of residential development on the site and within the town centre of Wellingborough, and sets the parameters for the scale and form of development proposals, including the demolition of all the existing buildings and structures. As mentioned, it's proposed to demolish the buildings and they'd be replaced with this main building, which would accommodate the 70 apartments. It would sit in line with the existing buildings on Midland Road, sited between Granville Chambers on the left and the telephone exchange on the right. And I'll come to some photos shortly. So therefore, it will maintain the existing relationship of the building within the street. The existing buildings are derelict and have deteriorated. Converting them was considered by the applicant, as well as retaining the facade of the post office building. However, due to viability constraints, it was considered unviable to convert the building or to retain the facade. So the design of the proposed building has been developed to be sympathetic to the local character. The elevations, as you can see, will be of a traditional appearance and are designed to integrate well with the neighbouring building, the Granville Chambers. And the detailing would be traditional to tie in with the Victorian centre of Wellingborough. The window frames are proposed to be dark grey and the building's red brick with a slate roof. And 2 stone ashlar walls are proposed to the facade to provide visual interest and break up the massing, the lighter shade bits on the front there. A stone cornice runs around the building at first floor level to resemble a similar feature on the post office building, with a further cornice just below the dormers, and that breaks up the height of the building and conceals a rainwater gutter. And then the entrance of this main block has been designed to resemble the entrance of the post office building. The main building reads as a single block, but is actually 2 separate blocks, each with their own accesses, linked at second floor level, and a driveway is created between those blocks, accessing the courtyard and amenity areas. Access to the ground floor apartments has been carefully considered to ensure that they have their own independent accesses, and all apartments on the upper floors are serviced by a lift and have been designed to comply with building regulations. The apartments all meet the prescribed national space standards, and each flat has adequate internal space for drying clothes. All habitable rooms to the apartments are positioned to the external wall so that they benefit from natural light and ventilation. This is the other internal side view. And then this is the smaller masonette-style apartment block, 4-apartment block with undercroft parking. And this is sited along the northern boundary to provide enclosure and to screen the site from the Matalan retail store and its car park to the rear. The outlook from these apartments is over the application site only. The adjacent telephone exchange building, which is to the east of the site, is approximately 24 metres tall to the roof parapet, and in addition to this, there are various masts on top of the building which are about 3 to 4 metres high. On the western boundary is Granville Chambers, which measures 16 metres in height to the ridge. Taking into account the existing ground levels, there is a 4.5 metre difference in height between Granville Chambers and the telephone exchange, excluding the masts. And the proposed apartment building would have a ridge height measuring 18.8 metres, so 1.8 metres lower than the Granville Chambers on the left and 2.7 metres lower than the telephone exchange. This is a view of the application site, building to be demolished, stood from outside the telephone exchange looking west. The existing access is where the black gates are. This is a view of the application site stood from Midland Road, the smaller part of the old post office building. This is the existing site, the telephone exchange. This is from within the site with the access on the left-hand side, telephone exchange on the left-hand side and Granville Chambers on the right. This is looking east from within the site. East but south, so at the rear of it. And then towards the western boundary with Granville Chambers. And then this is looking north from within the site. You can see the Matalan building beyond. So the proposal is on part of a site that's allocated for mixed-use development and includes the delivery of 74 apartments, which would make a valuable and significant contribution to meet North Northamptonshire's and the growth town of Wellingborough's strategic housing need and delivery targets. The application site is a brownfield site within the town centre, within the primary shopping area and along a secondary shopping frontage. The proposed residential use would ensure an active frontage and bring increased activity to the area. As mentioned, a financial viability assessment has been submitted in support of the application that demonstrates the scheme cannot support the provision of any retail accommodation and marketing undertaken that demonstrates there's no demand for retail or other similar commercial uses in this location. This was reviewed and agreed by an independently appointed viability consultant. The proposal utilises the existing access off Midland Road and provides 14 parking spaces with the intention that these are made available to the ground floor accessible dwellings. Based on the Northamptonshire parking standards, it means the site would be in deficit of 89 allocated spaces and 19 visitor spaces on site. The application proposes 24 cycle spaces within dedicated covered cycle racks, and the adopted standards require 1 cycle space per bedroom, which would trigger a need of 103 spaces. So the development provides an insufficient amount of parking in relation to the parking standards. However, significant weight should be afforded to the highly sustainable nature of the proposed development in terms of proximity to the town centre, shops and services, both within walking and cycling distances, and the proximity of public transport, bus and train, to the site. No affordable housing is proposed, and if vacant building credit would apply to the existing buildings on the site, and if applied, the total affordable housing units would have equated to 18. As mentioned, this application seeks to provide 100% market housing on the site. Within the submitted viability appraisal, it confirmed that the development with the required affordable housing, in accordance with policy, would not be a viable development. And again, the independently appointed viability consultant confirmed that the development could not provide the policy requirements in terms of affordable housing provision, financial contributions for community facilities or infrastructure without being viable. The proposal does not retain the facade of the existing building. However, the design of the building has been developed to be sympathetic to the local character and to sit comfortably within the street scene. The proposed elevations are of a traditional appearance and are designed to integrate well with the neighbouring buildings, and the entrance to the main block is designed to resemble the entrance to the post office building. So although the facade of the post office building is not being retained, the proposed scale and appearance reflect that of the post office building, and it retains the character and appearance of the area. The application site is within a conservation area, and there are listed buildings in the streets nearby, but the site itself is not listed. In weighing applications that directly or indirectly affect heritage assets, a balanced judgment is required having regard to the scale of any harm or loss and the significance of the heritage asset. This balanced judgment has been undertaken, and it's concluded that the considerable benefits of the scheme outweigh the demolition of the building and subsequently the loss of the facade, to which the harm is considered at the lower end of the scale, and the public benefit of housing provision outweighs this harm. The proposed biodiversity net gain plan would deliver enhanced on-site biodiversity and green infrastructure. A habitat regulations assessment to identify the likely effects of the development on the SPA has been undertaken, and an SPA mitigation payment of just over $29,000 will be secured within the Section 106 legal agreement, along with the proposed travel plan monitoring fee. So overall, it is considered that whilst finely balanced, the benefits of the proposal weigh in favour of the scheme and outweigh the impacts that would be caused by the loss of the facade of the post office building, the lack of on-plot parking, and no affordable housing provision, financial contributions towards community facilities or infrastructure. The applicants have provided satisfactory justification of why the building cannot be retained in redevelopment for the use they are seeking on site, and consider that demolition and comprehensive redevelopment of the site is the most viable and deliverable option. It's therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement and the conditions contained within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Members, do you have any questions or clarity? Darren? Sorry, Des.
Thank you very much, Chair. Reference the facade. Obviously, the builders are unable to keep it like that. Would it be possible to keep the entrance, which has the post office sign on it, to show that it was it a historical building at one point? I mean, we're only talking about a small piece.
So this application did go through extensive pre-application, and we did ask if any of the frontage could be retained at all, and that's why a full viability assessment was carried out, and part of that was did consider retaining the facade and things, and it came out that it wasn't viable to retain it and be able to redevelop the site to make it a viable scheme.
And what I'm actually talking about is just that door entrance to the post office, which has got the badge on top and it says post office, just that piece itself. Would that be able to be used to just show that it was a post office at one point?
I think that's what the applicant has tried to do in replicating it. It's not what's here in front of us today. This is what they've gone, like I said, there was a lot of pre-app discussions which involve conservation and everything as well, and so we have looked at lots of different options, and this is what's been submitted and is in front of us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Des. Any other questions? Okay. We have received the request of one person to address the meeting tonight, and that's Adrian Stevenson. Would you like to come forward? You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and Councillors. I'm here to speak in support of the former Wellingborough Post Office redevelopment. I don't know if Councillors are aware, but the site's been financially stranded and vacant for over 25 years now. The applicant and the consultant team have worked tirelessly for a substantial period of time in association with the Planning Department, statutory consultees and stakeholders to arrive at the attractive, sympathetic and fundamentally deliverable proposal that is in front of you this evening. As clearly outlined within the officer report, this proposal complies with local and national policies whilst respecting statutory consultee inputs as far as can possibly achieve within the constraints that this site, the most challenging of this site requires. The proposal, if approved, will finally enable the redevelopment of this stranded site and transform it into an attractive, much-needed focal building. I just want to make the comment about the retention of this history of the post office, and would be more than happy to take that back with the considerations. As Nicola's outlined, we have worked very hard to basically recreate an entrance that does pay homage to the former post office. And I know that's still part of the determination really to deliver, not to lose the history, but to put a building that's totally sympathetic within its setting, but fundamentally been able to address the financial viability issues that we've had. I can only hope that it's acknowledged those efforts that have been undertaken and urge you to support the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could just stay seated for a second. Members, can I ask you if there's any questions for Mr. Stevenson? James?
Yes, Mr. Stevenson, are you speaking in a personal capacity or are you representing the development organisation?
I'm the director for RDC. The consultants work with the applicant from the start of the pre-application that Nicola refers to. So we are in essence the architect for the development. Okay.
Thank you, James. Paul?
Yeah. Obviously these are all for sale, direct on the market. I'm assuming they're going to estate agents, they're not going on block to anyone.
It's not known at the moment. It is intended, obviously it's fundamental that it's viable for delivery. We tend to prefer the way it's set up at the moment as more what we refer to kind of more tenure blind than market, because there's lots of vehicles out there for delivering affordability, not just housing association affordability, but for first-time buyers and properties that people need. There's a lot of developers that have products that are, related to, buy to rent, and there's various mechanisms out there really to try and help deliver the site. That the fundamental thing is that for the first time we have a proposal that is actually able to be deliverable and attract somebody to purchase it, which hasn't been achieved in over 25 years. So the next stage will really to review where the site is, work with the applicant then to bring a partner or a procurement or sale arrangement through that ensures the delivery of the scheme. It's as simple as that, so that we're not tied down really to necessarily having to work with anybody in particular. It's about delivering the building, and that's the reality.
Thank you, Bill. Ben, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for that. It's a shame to lose the heritage of the facade, but I do understand. I mean, I work in the industry myself, and I understand that retaining that would have quite some cost associated to it. Dennis Councillor McLean made a fair point about the post office stone at the frontage. Appreciate it. I mean, it would be nice if that was included, but again, I understand how that interfaces with everything else in the building. But do you think there might be any work that the applicant can do on maybe salvaging some of have the architecture salvaged. I mean, particularly on the stone frontage. I mean, whether Swans Pool Gardens, for example, maybe they would want to use that for something just to keep some of their local heritage. I don't know. Thank you.
It's very difficult when you're going in for a planning application because you have to convey everything that's 100% confirmed and solid. And obviously the building has significant quirks about it, like floor heights and things that are just impossible to repeat to modern national design standard to the levels that we need. If things become salvageable, then why would you throw them away? And there's always a desire to keep some history, and being honest, that would be an asset to the building anyway. But what we've had to do is fundamentally is to show that we can recreate it with some respect to the former dwelling. And if there's a means to do something like that, I'll certainly be happy to relay it through to the applicant or partners, developers, as they come forward, if we're retained to take it forward, which we hope to be.
Thank you, Ben. Any more questions or clarification? Okay, would you like to turn your mic off and return your seat, Mr. Stevenson? Right, for the purpose of debate, in accordance with the Council's Constitution, Meeting Procedures Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I will move the recommendation at item 9, page 59 of the pack as follows. It is recommended that the delegated powers be given to the Executive Director of Place and Economy to approve the proposed development subject to the completion of a satisfactory Section 106 legal agreement, which secures appropriate planning obligations to meet the ends and terms set out in Appendix 1 and the conditions contained within the Section 10, the published report, including any amendments to those conditions deemed necessary. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Ben. Right, members, we'll move to the debate. Anybody would like to open up? David?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. Well, thank you very much for the very clear, detailed explanation of the proposal. It's very much to be welcomed that a town centre location that's been vacant for, as Mr. Stevenson said, I think it's 25 years, is being brought back into use. However, like many things in planning, nothing in the world is ideal. We're talking about 74 units. We're talking about very minimal car parking. Now, I know that the argument is made at 7.18.13 that the sustainable location of the proposal outweighs the lack of parking provision. All very true. The only problem is we keep hearing this, and we are talking about 74 units, many of whom will wish to operate a vehicle, and the off-site parking is, as I think anybody who visits central Wellingborough will agree, is somewhat difficult. Now, I'm not suggesting that is completely prohibits the development, but it is something I think that should be considered. Again, it's the cumulative impact when we are getting a number of these applications coming in, many of which don't have sufficient parking. And of course, they all say that the sustainable location of the proposals outweigh that point. Well, again, one that may very well be true in one location, and I appreciate that, of course, we are dealing with one application and we have to deal with it on its own merits. But it is, I think, something that the officers and those who are considering planning policy, do need to take into account. However, I think it was Mr. Stevenson, wasn't it, sir? Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Stevenson's point of respect to the heritage aspects is very welcome. I mean, I appreciate that at the moment there is no proposal to retain the facade, but respect for the former use of the building, I think is very much to be welcomed. It is, of course, disappointing that there is no specific affordable housing on the site, which is quite a substantial development of 74 units. But again, I also note that full viability consideration has been made on that. So, as the report indicates, Chair, it is finely balanced, and I do have a problem with the parking. I also have a problem with the fact that we have a 5.24 5-year housing land supply, which is good, but it's not super good, and we do have to consider overall development and keeping up with our requirements, especially in view of the potential context that the government have for considerable increases in housing growth. So I'm slightly struggling with this one. The parking is, I believe, going to be an issue, not necessarily on this particular development, but it is something that I think should be taken into consideration in planning policy terms going forward. And however, I do welcome this application as being one that brings a quite substantial part of central Wellingborough back into use from 25 years, if I get that correct, from 25 years of more or less derelict situation. So I'm struggling with it. It is finely balanced, but I do think that it is probably something I will slightly reluctantly support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave, for that. Anybody else? Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. I think, since I've been on the planning committee, we get plans through a lot where it's greenfield sites, and it's nice to see a brownfield site being developed, which has been sitting there for such a long time, especially as, we're short of housing generally within towns and that. As far as the parking goes, I think no matter what development we're going to have these days, there probably is always going to be an issue with parking, because even at 70 to 80 units, I'm not saying they're all going to have cars, but it's a possibility they may have. Well, that's just going to have to be dealt with, as it goes along. And to see places like Wellingborough being developed in this area for being undeveloped for a long time and sort of looking like an eyesore, I think it's a good thing, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Dennis. Ben?
Thank you, Chair. I can't imagine that there are many brownfield sites in the country, really, that have been vacant for 25 years in the middle of a town centre. I think they're fairly few and far between, and I think that it's already gone through the various viability tests. And if they're still struggling with the retail and the affordable housing element, which is obviously a massive shame to not have, I think given that it's been vacant for 25 years in the middle of a town centre is a very good thing to bring it back into use, and I'll be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. James?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's sad to see this site decay to a point where the building's actually too dangerous to enter. So something certainly needs to be done with the site. It's a shame that there's issues about the financial, commercial viability of it, and an issue with Section 106 monies being made available, though I note there is a late review mechanism included in the conditions for that. It's also appears to be a shame that there's no renewable energy technologies being used on the site, but I note I agree with some of the comments the other speakers have made in relation to this. So that's all I have to say on it. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Maurice?
Yeah, I am pretty much comfortable with this. The only issue I see is what everyone else has been saying, it's parking. If we keep saying, oh, we'll let this one through, we're going to run at a point where we're going to run out of places where people can park their cars. So I think it's something we need to look into in the future within our planning procedures.
Thank you, Maurice. Anybody else? Ben?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate the point I made earlier. It'd be nice to see if some of the architectural elements could be salvaged. I don't know if that's necessarily a planning term, and where that goes is obviously not necessarily relevant to this particular site, but it would be nice to see that there is an effort made to retain some of that unique architectural elements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Jenny?
Thank you, Chris. So I'm in favour of this application. It is balanced, and I think Councillor Brackenbury or David, I agree with him on most of the points. I'm disappointed that there's no affordable housing. I totally understand after the viability. I get that. It's just disappointing that that isn't available on this scheme. And I don't think we should just accept any scheme because this is the one that can be brought forward. It's not ideal, but on balance, I'm in favour of it. I think it's the 1 and 2 bedroom properties that it's going to bring forward will be a boost for Wellingborough. Parking is, like colleagues have said, is always an issue, but we're determining this one in front of us. We can't take into account the others. There is adequate parking, in my opinion, actually, in Wellingborough. There's the multi-storey, there's Jackson's Lane car park. Now, they're not necessarily always going to be there, so that's the issue. But at the moment they are there, so I think there isn't a problem, too much of a problem. Other applications come forward, and every single time parking is always an issue. But this is what's in front of us today, and I think if this can be developed, because it is an eyesore, and it will provide housing that we need. So, I mean, I will be in favour of it when we come to the vote, Chair.
Thank you, Jenny. Anybody else? No? Okay. Then I think we've had a very good discussion on this item, and it's been moved and seconded, so I think we'll go to the vote now. If you can show your cards. Sorry? Votes in favour first, sorry. 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Yeah, 11 in favour. Any abstentions or anybody against? No, I think that's carried in favour with 11 votes. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to the next item, which is for NC-24-00230-NMA, former Weetabix Limited Site, Earlstrees Road, Corby. I'll hand over to Richard Marlowe to present his report. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a non-material amendment application of the former Weetabix site off Earlstrees Road in Corby. So this is the application site located to the south of Hook Close, east of Rockingham Road there, and the north of Earlstrees Road. So that's the site layout showing the development in situ. And an aerial photograph there showing the site context, obviously before the development was completed. There to the east of the site itself, you can see the Avon industrial unit. The residential properties that were mentioned on Hook Close again, residential properties to the west on Rockingham Road and residential properties to the south at Pascal Close. So it's important to highlight what this application is. It's a non-material amendment to the original approval through NC 2022-00198/DPA, which was an approval for a warehouse unit back in 2022. So what's happened is this is an application to seeking to get consent for the very limited revisions to the building in the as-built state. So what we're looking at is a change in the finished floor levels of 180 millimetres, a change in the eaves height by 18 millimetres, and a change in the ridge height by 160 millimetres. This followed the council appointing independent surveyors and architects to assess the building in its built form. So this is an extract from the proposed site section showing the relationship of the building itself, and to the left there, one of the residential properties on Hook Close. If I show a more zoomed in example there you can see to the right hand side of the drawing in red outline, if I show the cursor, so the red outline just there is the as-built height, and in blue just below it is the consented height. So showing the very limited difference in height of the building, and there also, again it's a bit of an eyesight test, but showing the difference in the eaves there, where the eaves as built project slightly less than originally approved, but again they're 18 millimetres higher than has been originally approved. So these are in some important cross sections through the site, and the diagram at the top right there shows you where they relate to in accordance with the surrounding residential development. Key importance to note in this scheme is the land level difference between the nearest residential properties on Hook Close and the application site itself. There's a change in level of between 4 and 5.2 metres as you move from southwest to northeast up Hook Close, so the higher number of properties on Hook Close are slightly more elevated in relationship to the application site, and that obviously impacts on how the roof, particularly of the building, is appreciated from those neighbours. And I've got photographs in a moment which I can show you in some detail to talk you through those relationships. The next slide is taking a slightly more detailed, less of an eyesight test slide for that previous slide. So what's sort of indicatively marked there is a person located within the rear gardens of those properties on Hook Close, and the view that they would experience towards the building as built. What it demonstrates, and what you'll see from the photographs, is that the relationship is such that the 18mm change at the eaves is imperceptible to the human eye, and because of the convex shape of the roofline itself, the ridge of the building, which is set 17 metres beyond the elevation of the industrial unit, is not visible from those residential properties, even at first floor level. So it's therefore that change, the 18mm change at the eaves, which is potentially more impactful for those closest residential occupiers. And again, that's a more detailed extract of looking further up Hook Close, again showing that relationship and that very, very shallow angle at which that eaves line is viewed. These plans just show the other elevations of the building. I'll show you them in more detail with relationship to the photographs, but at the bottom, so on the drawing here, again shows the difference between the consented scheme and the scheme that's presented tonight, but given the scale of the changes, it's very difficult to see on those plans. So I'll talk you around the site now so you get a full appreciation of the building as it's been constructed. So this is the view of the site from the junction at the south. So that's Earlstrees Road, where the car's approaching the roundabout on the right-hand side, and Rockingham Road running across the front of the photograph there. This is looking from the south of the site north up towards the actual building. So this is a view. So I'm stood there with the residential units at Pascal Close behind me. So that's the view that's experienced from those residential occupiers. The closest occupier there is a minimum of 105 metres to the building. So it's quite some distance, and as you can see, at that distance, those very, very limited changes to the roof line are imperceptible. So moving round to the west, so this is the view from the slip road and the residential properties off Rockingham Road. There you can see the sort of three convex elements of the roof line. This elevation is at least 50 metres from those residential properties, obviously screened by that vegetation. So just moving around a little bit further, this is starting to show the relationship between the building itself and the residential properties on Hook Close. Again, a slightly different angle showing that relationship, and I'll talk you through the more detail. So this is a very important diagram. So this is showing that change in levels that I was discussing earlier. So you've got the site there on the right-hand side and the nearest residential occupiers there at numbers 2 and 4, Hook Close, on the left-hand side. But you can see, again, that change in levels, and you can see how the sort of roof line appears in relationship to those residential occupiers. So in this time we've moved sort of about halfway along Hook Close. I'm stood on the rear parking court between numbers 14 and 16 Hook Close. So that's looking northeast up the close, and again you can see the eaves line on the right hand side of the building there. And spun round on the same spot, looking back down the road, southwest, just trying to think of the orientation, looking southwest down the road with the lower numbered Hook Close properties. This is at the end of Hook Close, so this is between numbers 44 and 46 as a shared private drive. Taking this photograph a little bit sort of set back from the building itself to sort of get an appreciation of the building line, which was on the right hand side there, and what I was talking about the hidden ridge line of the building. So there you can see it's just these sort of eaves, and the very first element of the roof of the building itself is that's visible from those properties. And again, just sort of moving in a little bit closer there and looking along the line of the roof line. So, as I've discussed, the application is for very, very limited changes to the original consent. It's not seeking to open the permission or assess the application in totality. It's seeking those very small adjustments to the building in relationship to its eaves, its ridge height and the finished floor levels, to respect and to bring it in line with the building as built. As I set out in the officer report, it's considered that for the reasons that I've set out in the presentation, the application is acceptable, subject to those conditions which are set out at the end of the officer report. So officers are therefore recommended the application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Do members have any questions or clarity? Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. Just more of information from you. What was the technical reason for this rise in it? Was it something to do with a problem with the roof, or?
It was primarily brought about because there was an existing concrete pad from the former Weetabix building. So in developing their site, they sought to retain as much of the concrete pad as possible to reduce the need to take waste materials off the site. And that therefore increased the finished floor levels by the 180 millimetres, and conversely then that transpires, that was sort of mirrored up through the building. But that was a primary reason they wanted to keep as much of the existing concrete pad as possible.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dennis. Gordon?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask how tall the building is?
Yeah, it's 15.555 metres in height. What has been specified, if I go back to this slide here, what is in all the measurements that the surveyors and the architects undertook, they've all used AOD, so above ordnance datum height measurements, so they're nationally recognised height standards. So they've compared there on the left-hand side the approved plans. So in this instance, the approved plan is 134.575 metres, and the actual height is 137.375. So it's been done through above ordnance datum because it's obviously the relationship of the building itself, particularly with those residents at Hook Close. It's that relationship which is very important. So the building could be 15.5 metres, but if it had been moved up or down elevationally, that relationship's different.
Okay.
Because obviously the Hook Close properties aren't moving because they're established dwellings. So it's that relationship to understand. So they've taken those measurements using the above ordnance datum to give certainty to us as a local planning authority about the level of the changes that are made, and that's reflected in that right-hand column there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much, Richard. I haven't received any requests to address this meeting, so for the purpose of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution meeting procedure rules 19.2 and 19.21, I will move the recommendation at item 9 of the pack as follows. It is recommended that non-material amendment be approved subject to the conditions contained within the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. And right, members, let's have a debate. Anybody like to say anything? Morris?
Yeah, I think this is just sort of self at the planners. There's no win or loss with this because there's nothing really to say. It's just millimetres different, so yeah, I'm for it.
Thank you, Morris. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, as is quite clearly pointed out in the report, the changes are de minimis. They are very, very insignificant with the scale and the massing of the building in the first place. And obviously, Planning Commission was granted for this development some time ago, back in 2022. The changes are imperceptible to the naked eye, unless you've got a very, very good sextant or something to do your trigonometry. So yeah, I mean, as Councillor Eglin says, yeah, I mean, it's not really a lot to discuss really, and it's a non-material matter. So yeah, go for it.
Thank you, David. And Willie?
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if anyone could confirm that we've been here before with this, with the developer asking for an increase in height. I seem to recall in the last council that this came before us at planning, and it was said to us that this is only the length of a pencil. It doesn't really matter. I think this does matter. Okay, it's an imperceptible change to height. What matters to me is, once again, these people in and around Hook Close are being treated with utmost contempt by the developer, who has shown absolutely no regard for the residents from day one, and continued to plod along and make change after change after change. It is truly contemptible. I don't doubt that this will go through. Hopefully this will be the last, and that imperceptible increases or changes will stop and people can get on with living their lives in and around Hook Close. Sorry for the rant, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. Anybody else? Oh, James?
Yes, I don't feel that the developer's been trying to gain anything with the changing height of the building. we've heard an explanation on why it has crept up those sort of 180 mil, sort of 7 inches, but they're not. The floors come up proportionally, so they're not gaining any advantage with clearance inside the building. So I'm prepared to accept that explanation.
Thank you, James. Sorry, Maurice.
I just want to come back with what I was just thinking just then, is the only reason they've done this is because they're keeping the concrete. And I think that's a really good thing, because that's going to save waste of resources. And at the end of the day, if it saves a bit of time and effort and saves that material from being dug up and causing more of a problem for the residents nearby, I think it's worth it.
Thank you, Maurice. Anybody else like to say anything? No? Okay then. Right, members, the recommendation has previously been detailed and has been moved and seconded, so we'll go now for the vote. Can members show the cards of the relevant colour? We're going to go for the 4 first. 1, 2. Is that 10 in favour? 10 in favour. Anybody against? Nobody against. And anybody wants to abstain? 1 abstention. So that is carried by 10 votes. Thank you very much. In favour, by the way, sorry. As there's no further business to discuss, I will close the meeting at 19:56.